Hi, I'm Ben from InterNACHI, and I'm standing in front of the InterNACHI House of Horrors in Colorado. It's an entire house with 1,000 defects built under our roof. In this video, we're going to learn a little bit about deck ledger flashing, and we're also going to refer to the International Residential Code. So get out your textbook and let's take a look at this demonstration of deck ledger flashing. Okay, so the International Residential Code, love this code book, section R703.4, flashing. It says approved corrosion resistant flashing shall be applied in a shingle fashion in a manner to prevent entry of water into the wall cavity or penetration of water into the building structural framing components. And self-adhered membranes could be considered flashing according to some standards. So that's, again, R703.4. So let's go over some of the components of this little demo here of the deck ledger flashing, and then we'll talk about the flashing itself. So this is the poured concrete foundation on some grass next to it, and there's a seal gasket, seal plate on top of the foundation wall, band joist, floor sheathing, stud wall, exterior sheathing, and this is the house wrap. And this is also considered the drainage plane and the water resistive barrier. This is flashing here, so this would be installed next. This would be below the ledger board, and the membrane would be installed this way on top of the top edge of the flashing, and then the ledger board is installed. So the top edge of this metal flashing down here would be protected by a shingle manner-like installation of the membrane waterproofing. And then the ledger board is attached. It's got to be at least a 2x8. And then flashing on the top. And then to cover that top edge of the metal flashing, we have the membrane once again. And it's adhesive, right? Now, to continue that shingle flashing manner, what we did was we cut the house wrap and feathered in this top membrane, which is covering the top of the metal flashing, and it's adhered underneath the house wrap. And then this incision, this cut, is taped over. So this is flashing, metal flashing, metal flashing. You've got your floor joists attached with floor joist hangers to the ledger board. So in the code book, it says applied in a shingle-like fashion, right? A manner to prevent entry of water into the wall cavity. Well, I think of shingle-like as to be like this, where they're referring to asphalt shingles of a roof, and the bottom layer is there, and then this is shingled on top of that and shingled on top of that. So everything is diverted away. It's shingled, it's overlapped in the correct manner. There isn't any open edge, right, to allow water to come in. Everything, if you can imagine water coming down in a shingle-like fashion, everyth's installed in a manner to divert water away from the structure itself. So when you're looking at the installation of deck ledger flashing, the important part is it's installed in a shingle-like fashion. So let's look at this a little bit up close. Again, the metal flashing overlapped with the membrane. The deck ledger is attached, and then at the top, let's remove the floorboards of the deck. We have metal flashing here. The top edge of the metal flashing is overlapped by another sheet of membrane, and then that incision where it's feathered in and taped over. Now, the actual installation of all of this shingling and materials isn't detailed in code at all. It's really construction standard, best practices, things like that. The code just says applied shingle fashion in a manner to divert water away. So there are a few resources where you may see some differences in between this area here in particular, above the top flashing, but the idea is to shed water away. Another detail is, how does this flashing, how do we get this installed properly? And there are many recommendations. Code is silent. Some resources say that the contractor should make some incisions on on both sides of the floor joist and bend this down. Some say that this flashing actually should be installed behind the ledger board. That doesn't make any sense. Another one says it should be lipped over, and that would mean bending the flashing on site. I think cutting the flashing and bending the flashing is too much. It introduces too much room for human error with the contractors. This is actually very easy to install. And you would actually pull the floorboard away just a little bit to give it a little room to drain. Code mentions water resistive barrier, and it says the water resistive barrier in section R703.2, it's one layer of number 15 asphalt, felt, complying with a certain standard, or other approved water resistive barriers, and that's the waterproofing membrane. So this material is compliant with code and best practices as well. There are a bunch of defects that you probably see. The fasteners aren't installed properly, and the actual joist hangers were cut. They were actually for 2x10s, and this is a 2x8 installation. Now, one of the things while we're here is clearance to grade. If siding was here, let's just assume siding is here, it would be installed below the bottom flashing, and you can think of 2, 6, and 8. What you want is 8 inches from this piece of wood. Any wood seal component on top of the foundation needs to be at least 8 inches away from ground, unless it's preservative treated. But in general, I think of it as a home inspector, 8 inches. If there was siding here, the bottom of this siding should be at least 6 inches from grade. And if the ground was a walking surface, like a sidewalk, a hard surface, you need at least 2 inches of clearance. IRC code book says section R317.3.1 talks about the fasteners. And then we talk about also 1/2-inch diameter bolts if the fasteners of the ledger board is for bolts. But the fasteners here includes nuts and washers for preservative treated wood, shall be of hot dipped G185 zinc coated galvanized steel, stainless steel, silicone bronze, or copper fasteners. Here we have fasteners attaching the ledger board to the structure. Here, there's one there, there's one hidden over there, and they're actually, we picked these up at Home Depot, Ledger Lock. And Ledger Lock actually says, the coating on this fastener has been tested in wood treatment chemicals such as ACQ, and found to provide equivalent protection to code-approved hot-dipped galvanized. So they're saying it's equivalent to the code requirements. And obviously there's a defect here. This isn't sunk in all the way, and this is sunk in too much. And that one is actually behind the joist, which isn't a problem, except for the joist now is not fully inserted into the joist hanger. The ledger board has to have a clearance of 2 inches. So you can't have a fastener within the top 2 inches of the ledger board and the bottom 3/4 of the ledger board. If it's too close to the edge, the idea is that the board will crack. So the top needs more meat of the wood. So there's a 2-inch clearance. You can't have a ledger fastener within that top 2 inches and the bottom 3/4. This one here is getting a little close, so it's one of the things you can keep a look at. Oh, and also 2 inches from the end. So if this was an end of a ledger board, you don't want a fastener at the very end, it would crack it. And code mentions this seal gasket, and it's in section or table N1102.4.1.1, and it's really for air leakage. There are termite plates and things like that, but air leakage is recommended to stop air leakage. There's also recommendations from other sources about putting spray foam sealant or glue here, 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 and there, just to stop air leakage. Now let's take a look around the other side here. And we can take a look at bolts that attach the ledger plate, that attach the sill plate to the poured concrete foundation. 1/2 inch bolts need to be embedded into the poured concrete foundation at least 7 inches. It's impossible for a home inspector to see that. You can look for defects like a loose washer here. You can look for spacing as well of the fasteners. And you want the fasteners within the middle third, ideally. You don't want, again, a fastener on the very edge. You can also take a look at the ledger board fasteners as they come through the band joist. They're required, the tips are required to go through the band joist. And I see one here, so that's good. There's a crack in the floor joist here. Looks like a nail was missed there. So that's a quick training video on the deck ledger flashing. Remember, a shingle-like manner. And this demonstration is always here at the InterNACHI House of Horrors in Boulder, Colorado. Feel free to come on by and take a look for more defects. And I'll see you in the next video. Bye.